Chapter 4. Ruy Lopez, Chigorin variation. We will replay the main line and the important sublines, with pauses for tactics. Welcome back to our Ruy Lopez timeline. In Chapter 3, Steinitz showed an older defensive idea: protect e5 first, accept a smaller position, and wait for white to overextend. Now we move to the next major step in the Spanish, Chigorin-style counterplay. The opening shape changes. Black no longer plays the old Steinitz defense with an immediate d6. Instead, Black develops more flexibly: a6, nf6, b7, b5, d6, and then na5. That knight move is the signature idea. Black attacks the Spanish bishop on b3 and asks white to decide where the bishop belongs. At the same time, Black prepares c5, queen activity on c7, and queenside expansion. Your job in this lecture is to notice the new philosophy. Steinitz defended first. Chigorin counterattacks while developing. Black accepts some space disadvantage, but the pieces are ready to bother white's center and bishop before white can build the perfect kingside attack. e4. White begins with the open game move. The Ruy Lopez still starts from the same central question: can white keep long-term pressure after both e-pawns appear on the board? Black accepts the classical fight. The e5 pawn will again become the center of the story. In the Chigorin system, Black defends it, but also looks for active counterplay instead of only sitting behind it. Knight f3. White attacks e5. This move is simple, but it forces Black to reveal how the center will be supported. Knight c6. Black develops and defends. The knight protects e5, but it also becomes the target of the Spanish bishop. Bishop b5. The Ruy Lopez. White attacks the defender rather than the pawn. This indirect pressure is what gives the Spanish its long strategic life. a6. Black asks the bishop a question immediately. This is the Morphy lesson from Chapter 1, returning to the main road. Before building the center, Black gains time and space by forcing the bishop to declare itself. Bishop a4. White keeps the bishop. The bishop stays on the a4 e8 diagonal and preserves pressure against the knight on c6. Knight f6. Black develops with tempo on e4. This is more active than the old Steinitz setup. Black is not only defending e5, Black is also asking white how the e4 pawn will be handled. Kingside castles. White castles. White leaves the e4 pawn loose, but gains the rook on the e-file and keeps development fast. This is the modern Spanish road. Bishop e7. Black develops quietly. The bishop prepares castling and avoids the immediate pawn grab of the open Ruy Lopez. This is the beginning of the closed Spanish structure. Let's see what happens if knight takes e4 is played instead of bishop e7. Knight takes e4. This is the open Ruy Lopez question from Chapter 2. It is playable, but it leads to a different family of positions. In the Chigorin system, Black keeps the center closed for longer and builds counterplay around it. Let's return back to the main line. Please feel free to pause the video and find the best continuation for white. If you found rook e1, b5, bishop b3, kingside castles, c3, excellent. Let's see the idea on the board. Rook e1. White protects e4 and claims the e-file. This is one of the main Spanish ideas. The rook lines up with black's king and supports a later central break. b5. Black gains queenside space. This move is not just a chase. It makes room for bb7 in some lines, supports future queenside expansion, and gives the knight on c6 a clear story: defend e5 now, jump to a5 later. Bishop b3. White retreats to the long diagonal. The bishop looks at f7 and keeps pressure on the center from a safer square. But now it can also become a target for na5. Kingside castles. Black castles. Both kings are now tucked away, so the fight becomes a race of plans. White wants central and kingside pressure, black wants queenside counterplay and pressure on white's center. c3. White builds the Spanish center. The c-pawn supports d4. White is preparing to occupy the center with pawns rather than only attack it with pieces. d6. Black reinforces e5. This is the Steinitz idea in a more active shell. Black protects the center, but now the bishop is developed, the king is castled, and the queenside has already expanded. h3. White prevents bg4. This small move is a big part of closed Spanish technique. White wants d4 without allowing the bishop pin to become annoying. White has space, while black has enough counterplay if the queenside plan starts on time. Knight a5. This is the Chigorin move. Black attacks the bishop on b3 and clears c6 for other piece routes. White should not panic, but black has successfully asked a useful question and gained time against the Spanish bishop. Let's see what happens if knight b8 is played instead of knight a5. Knight b8. This is another famous Spanish idea, later associated with the brayer. The knight retreats to reroute through d7 and f8. It is strategically deep, but it belongs to a later chapter. The Chigorin method is more direct. na5 hits the bishop immediately. Let's return back to the main line. Bishop c2. White preserves the bishop. The bishop returns to c2, where it still eyes h7 and supports kingside pressure. The cost is time. Black has made white move the same bishop several times. c5. Black challenges the center. This is the key follow-up. If na5 only chased the bishop, it would be a one-move idea. With c5, black also fights d4 and asks whether white's center can stay stable. White occupies the center. White cannot simply allow black to be comfortable. The d4 break is the main Spanish test. White claims space and opens lines for the pieces. Queen c7. Black supports the center and eyes c2. The queen connects with the bishop on e7 and keeps pressure on the c-file. Black is not forced to resolve the center immediately, so the move keeps useful tension. Knight on the b-file to d2. White develops the queenside knight. The knight supports f1 g3 routes and helps prepare a long-term kingside build-up. This is the start of classic Spanish maneuvering. Knight c6. Black returns the knight. This looks surprising at first. Why move the knight back after na5? The point is that black gained a tempo on the bishop, induced bc2, and now brings the knight back to fight d4 and b4. Knight f1. White begins the Spanish knight journey. The knight often heads to g3 or e3. White improves slowly before deciding whether to open the center or build a kingside attack. C takes d4. Black clarifies the center at the right moment. The exchange reduces White's pawn mass and gives Black a clearer square map. Black should not drift here. If White is allowed to build for free, the space advantage can become uncomfortable. C takes d4. White recaptures and keeps central space. White still has a pawn on d4, but the c pawn is gone. That means the c file and c4 square can become useful for Black later. Bishop d7. Black develops with a practical purpose. The bishop connects the rooks and supports queenside coordination. Black is preparing rac8, and sometimes x4 followed by pressure against the center. Knight e3. White improves the knight. From e3, the knight can look at f5, d5, g4, and c4. White is trying to turn the space advantage into piece pressure. Rook on the a file to c8. Black claims the c file. This is the Chigorin spirit, do not wait passively. Black uses the half-open file created by the central exchange and asks White's queen and bishop how comfortable they really are. a3. White restrains nb4. This is a typical quiet move with a concrete purpose. White takes the b4 square away from Black's knight, so Black cannot jump to b4 and attacks the bishop on d3 or the queen on d2 with tempo. Rook on the f-file to e8. Black adds central pressure. The rook supports e5 and prepares bf8 ideas. The position remains balanced, but Black has achieved the strategic goal. White has space, yet Black has clear counterplay. d5. White gains space. This is the natural clamp. White fixes the center and hopes to attack on the king side before Black breaks through on the queen side. Knight a5. Black returns to the Chigorin square. The knight attacks c4 and b3 ideas, and again reminds White that the queen side is not secure. This is not a refutation of White's plan. It is active play for Black, forcing White to keep answering queenside questions. Bishop d3. White repositions the bishop. The bishop leaves c2 and supports the king side. White wants control over f5 and h7, and may prepare bd2 or b4 depending on Black's setup. Knight c4. Black plants the knight on c4. This is one of the rewards of the Chigorin setup. The knight that chased the bishop can later land on c4, where it pressures b2, e3, and the queenside dark squares. b3. White challenges the outpost. White cannot let the knight sit on c4 forever. The pawn move asks the knight to declare its next square. Knight takes e3. Black exchanges the advanced knight. This is a practical decision. Black gives up the outpost, but removes White's active knight and slightly loosens White's coordination. Bishop takes e3. White recaptures with the bishop. White keeps pieces aimed toward the king side and center. The position is still a strategic struggle rather than a tactical collapse. Queen b7. Black keeps pressure on the center. The queen eyes d5 and b3, and the rooks stay ready for c-file or e-file play. The lesson is clear: in the Chigorin, Black's moves often do two jobs. They bother the bishop and also pressure the center. Queen d2. White connects the rooks and prepares Rac1 or Rec1. White would like to neutralize black's activity before starting a kingside attack. Bishop d8. Black reroutes the bishop. The bishop may come to b6 or a5, and the move clears e7 for the queen or knight in some lines. It is a quiet maneuver, but it fits the closed Spanish perfectly. Rook on the a-file to c1. White contests the c-file. Once black has a half-open c-file, white must not ignore it. This is why the Spanish becomes a maneuvering battle. Every file and square needs supervision. Rook takes c1. Black exchanges one pair of rooks. This reduces white's attacking force and keeps the c-file under control. Rook takes c1. White recaptures. White still has pressure and more space, but the position is easier for black to defend than a pure kingside race. Bishop b6. Black improves with tempo ideas. The bishop attacks e3 and asks white whether to exchange or retreat. This is another Chigorin style theme: develop, hit a target, and make white spend time. Bishop takes b6. White chooses simplification. White removes the active bishop before it becomes a long-term nuisance. Let's see what happens if bishop g5 is played instead of bishop takes b6. Bishop g5. White tries a more aggressive idea. Instead of simplifying at once, white pins the knight on f6 and threatens bx f6. The point is to damage black's king shelter and make the dark squares around the king easier to attack. This is a very natural move. If black recaptures with the g-pawn after bx f6, the pawn leaves g7, the king's shelter is damaged, and white can dream of ideas like nh4, qh6, or pressure on the c-file combined with kingside targets. Rook c8. Black answers with activity. The rook comes to the c-file before white can enjoy a free attacking move. This is the key practical answer. Black does not passively wait for the kingside structure to be damaged. Black says, if white spends time on bg5 and bx f6, the c-file will become urgent. Bishop takes f6. White captures the knight. This is the idea behind bg5. White removes a defender and hopes that black's kingside pawns become loose. G takes f6. Black accepts the structural damage. The kingside pawns are no longer pretty, but black has compensation. The rook is active on the c-file, the queen and rook can pressure white's queenside, the g-file may later help black's rook, and white's attack is not immediate because the queen is not yet on h6. So bg5 is not a bad move. It simply leads to a slower attacking story. The main line with bx b6 and qc2 is more forcing, because it sets a concrete back rank trap right away. Let's return back to the main line. Queen takes b6. Black recaptures and centralizes the queen. Black has solved the opening. The queen is active, the rooks are connected, and white's extra space has not turned into a direct attack. Queen c2. White keeps the c-file contested. The queen also guards e4 and creates a very important back rank tactic. If black carelessly contests the c-file with rc8, white can force mate. h6. Black gives the king luft. This is the precise defensive point. By moving the h-pawn, black gives the king the h7 square and avoids the back rank mate shown in the rc8 line. Only after making luft can black safely allow the queen trade. Let's see what happens if rook c8 is played instead of h6. Rook c8. This natural-looking move fails tactically. Black wants to challenge the c-file, but the back rank is too weak because the king has no look on h7. Queen takes c8, check. White removes the rook with check. The queen sacrifice works because white's rook is ready to recapture on c8. Bishop takes c8. Black is forced to accept. The bishop captures the queen, but now the c-file opens for white's rook. Rook takes c8, check. White's rook invades with check. Black can block the check, but the defense is overloaded. Queen d8. The queen blocks the 8th rank. This is forced, but it only delays the mate. Rook takes d8, check. White captures the queen. The rook stays on the 8th rank, and black still has no escape square. Knight e8. The knight blocks the final check. Black has one last interposition. Rook takes e8, checkmate. Checkmate. This is why qc2 is more than a quiet queen move. White sets up a back rank tactic against any careless rc8. Let's return back to the main line. Queen c7. White offers a queen trade. This is a sensible practical choice. If white cannot build an attack, simplifying can preserve a small space pull without allowing black's queen to become too active. Queen takes c7. Black accepts the trade. With queens off, black's opening has achieved its purpose. The Chigorin plan did not win material, but it neutralized white's ideal attacking setup. Rook takes c7. White recaptures and reaches a balanced endgame. The final position shows the chapter's main point. Black used a6, b7, b5, d6, na5, c5, and c-file play to keep the Spanish bishop and white center under constant pressure. Chigorin's contribution was not a single tactic. It was a strategic rhythm: chase the bishop, challenge the center, occupy useful files, and make white prove that the space advantage is real. In the next chapter, we will move toward Capablanca-era clarity and see how the Ruy Lopez became a model of clean development, small advantages, and endgame-friendly pressure. As we saw in this lesson, the Chigorin system gives black active counterplay in the closed Ruy Lopez. Bishop e7 and b5 develop safely, d6 secures e5, knight a5 gains time on the Spanish bishop, and c5 plus c-file pressure challenge white's center.